Well, today we're going to be working on the heat on my 68 Park Lane Brougham. It's getting cold here, and it's cold inside the car. That's not good. The air conditioning works, but of course I don't need air conditioning when it's 40 degrees outside. I'm trying to drive this thing a little bit before the snow flies so I can enjoy it. And so long as I get toasty heat, I don't care that it's cold. The car actually runs better in the cold than it does in the hot heat. Just a gorgeous car. For those who haven't seen yet, this is my 68 Park Lane Brougham, factory 428 with a heavy-duty C6 transmission. One of my favorites of my collection, especially because it's 428 equipped and pretty loaded with AC, power windows, power seat, even the automatic headlamp dimmer that you see there. Tilt wheel, cruise control, AM, FM, power antenna, which they always put the power antenna back there for whatever reason, as opposed to up there where the manual antenna is. You can see it actually on that car. That one has the manual antenna. So let's get to it and have a little bit of fun while we're at it. I love all the fake wood trim on this car. Okay, here we go. Well, today we're working on the 68 Park Lane Brougham, and it's cold out now. And I discovered I didn't have any heat. Air conditioning works great, but I didn't have any heat. So first problem was that I wasn't getting vacuum to this heater valve. So on these, as opposed to modern cars and I'll say more recent cars, a lot of these old cars control the heat by the amount of coolant flowing through the heater core as opposed to a blend door. And so how this works on this car is that you move the slider bar on the inside here, up there, from hot to cold. And then that moves a cable here, which then goes into this vacuum nipple. There's always vacuum here. And then as this cable moves back and forth, it basically regulates the amount of vacuum that goes on this side of the port, which then comes over here, and then it opens this diaphragm, allowing the coolant to pass into the heater core. So that's pretty typical on a lot of these older cars before they had blend doors. They just regulated the amount of coolant into the heater core. So the first problem was I wasn't getting any vacuum here. So I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe there's something under this little control box. There's a plastic cover that goes on top of that. Maybe there's something on this control box that's broken, or a vacuum is leaking somewhere. So I thought, well, I'll just connect a vacuum source to this, i.e. my mouth. I just put a little vacuum hose on here and sucked on it. And then coolant flowed through the heater core. I had hot heat. No issue there. But then I noticed that the old diaphragm was leaking at the bottom. You can kind of see some residual staining. So had to find one of these. And of course, they do make replacements, but they're not in this style, just so you know, of the Ford style where they have this threading on there. There's a little nut, little nut back there, and you can just take that off. It's not on tight, but that secures it to that bracket. So you kind of have to get a Ford OEM part, which they're still available, but they're not cheap anymore. So that was first step. So I got a new valve here. And again, very easy. Just disconnect these two heater hoses, back off that nut, pulls right out. So 5-minute job. So then I had a new heater water valve. Then I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. Why is there no vacuum? And long story short, if I manually operate this, I get vacuum. So everything's working here. The problem is, as you can probably see, my cable is broken. So when I move the slider bar, it will push this closed, but it won't return to heat. I kind of have to manually put it in the heat position. So I either got to get a new cable, or I have to figure out the best way to get this reconnected. It moves freely, actually, when I hold the sleeve and try to move it. I mean, I'm sure it's just a little stiff after all these years. So if anybody's got any ideas, let me know. In the interim, I'll probably try to basically take this down, see if I can move the cable over. It looks like it's got some stretch, and reclamp it. Maybe I'll get lucky and that works. I mean, worst case scenario, I just kind of leave it on the halfway position for the winter time, so it's not totally full blast heat. The heat in this car is hot. It gets really hot. I just regulate it with the fan speed. And then if I ever need to put the air conditioning on, this will work if I push it toward the cold side. It will move. You can also see the little relay clicking there. That's to turn the air conditioning compressor on and off. Kind of an interesting setup on these Fords with the air conditioning. But that's how that works. They have all these little vacuum diaphragms and everything to engage the air conditioning compressor, but it works well. So hopefully after not too long, I will have some hot heat. But this is how a lot of these Fords, the Thunderbirds, etc. This, I think, valve is from a Thunderbird, so they used it for a number of years. You can still find them, like I said, but they're getting a little tricky to find. Oh well, it's just part of working on these old vehicles. Thankfully, helps to have a reference where the heat works and everything works, so you can just check and see how it's supposed to work. I have quite a few 68 Fords, so no stranger to this. All right, we'll button it up and see what I can do. Okay, so all done now, and I was able to adjust the heater cable. I don't quite have full travel. That's the max travel that I have when it's on heat. It goes all the way cold, no problem, but because I had to move the cable over a little bit because the sleeve was broken, that's the max travel I have, and it's about 40 degrees out here, and I just took the car for a spin, and that is plenty hot enough. It still gets toasty warm in here, so I'm just going to leave it like that for now. These cars have really good heat, so having 3/4 or 2/3 of the amount of heat that you need, it works just fine. So that's the plan. I'll see if I can find another cable to replace it, but no big deal. Like I said, it's 40 degrees, and this is more than adequate to keep the car warm inside, toasty warm on a day like today. So even if it's 20 degrees outside, I should be all right. And I'm not going to be driving this car when it's 20 degrees. So I think that's it. Gotta love your Mercury, except for the key placement. Very odd key placement there. Almost hard to see when you're sitting in this position. So that's an anti-theft feature. Along with, this car doesn't have it, but most of the time you got to pull the gear shift lever up in these Fords because the neutral safety switch doesn't work. So that's my story. Thanks for watching.